What is up, everyone?
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm Nathan Marzian, joined by Brandon Eckel. Today, it's Tuesday top 10. We're gonna have our this week we're doing top 10, basically ranking the last 10 NBA Finals. Obviously, with the NBA Finals coming up, we're gonna be talking a lot about that. Um, so ranking the last 10 NBA Finals, worst to best, and then we're gonna first though talk about a little bit about Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals, and then NBA Finals preview. Just not go too much into it. Obviously, like the Bucks are involved. We'd be much more in depth if they were and stuff. But give a little, our thoughts on basically what has transpired in the NBA playoffs since the Bucks got eliminated. But yeah, so obviously Warriors, Celtics. I think honestly, this is a pretty good NBA Finals. Like I'm not, I don't like Boston, but I think it's much more interesting than it would have been if it was Warriors Heat.
Yeah.
Warriors Heat, I would have been pretty confident, like 5-game series, And I do think, I mean, we'll get into our predictions and stuff. I do think Warriors Celtics could be a 5-game series, but like I'm at least confident the games will be pretty close. I like the matchup, the offense against the Warriors offense against Boston's defense. I like all that, and I'm confident the game's gonna be close. It'll be a competitive series, even if either way, like even if one team kind of just wins a bunch of close games or whatever. I think it'll at least be interesting. But yeah, so real quick, let's talk about the Eastern Conference. No, we'll start with the West. We'll start with the West because East was a little bit more interesting, I'd say. Obviously, Curry wins the Western Conference Finals MVP. Warriors beat the Mavs in 5 games. They went up 3-0. Another series with a lot of, there were a lot of blowouts. I think only game 3 was close in it. I'm trying to think of game 3. I know was close. Game 4 was, I think, a blowout. Game 5 was pretty much a blowout, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'll look it up for you while you're talking because I can't remember exactly. But
I know game 3 was close because I remember watching it. I remember, watching the end of it at least. I watched games 4 and 5, but it was like, I remember I think by halftime, third quarter ish, you kind of were like, yeah, this game's over. But yeah, I mean, Warriors were just too much offensively. And this is part of the reason why I mean, full disclosure, I think most people know I don't like the Celtics, and I'm picking Golden State, and I actually think Golden State's going to win. This is part of the reason why they just have enough offensive firepower to finally bother the Celtics, whereas I don't think the Celtics have faced a team with this much, depth in terms of offense and multiple guys that can beat you. You obviously have Steph. Clay was huge. Wiggins, Poole have stepped up a ton. Draymond can give you some offense from time to time. And yeah, I mean, they got other guys stepping up. Looney has been really good. Like, I just think they have so many guys that step up. They just seem like a championship team to me where the role players are playing their roles perfectly. Plenty of guys stepping up. They seem good on both sides of the ball consistently. And, they've been looked pretty dominant in these playoffs so far. So, yeah, I'm impressed with the Warriors. And as far as the Mavs, I mean, we kind of – I don't want to say. I mean, I did think it was going to be more competitive than it was, but it's Luka without a ton of help. It's he did his best. He had a pretty good series, but ultimately, I mean, again, the depth of the Warriors just wins out. I feel like they have it's too much for teams to handle sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. They it just they can turn it on at any given moment, and most of the time they do already have it turned on. And just I guess I just trust them more than pretty much any team just because of how many times they've been to the finals. Clay, Draymond, and Steph playing together for so long together. So that kind of plays a key part into it. And as we'll kind of get into the East and the Celtics, it's like Celtics are a really good young team, great defense, but I trust the Warriors a lot more than I trust the Celtics to be able to come out there and win.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just looking at some of the stats here. Curry is doing his thing. He's not putting up insane numbers, but kind of his usual 26, 5 and 6 ish.
Mm-hmm.
Clay is putting up nearly 20, shooting 40% from 3. Jordan Poole is dang near 50, 40, 90. He's at 53% in the playoffs, 53% from the field, 39% from 3, and 92% from the line, 18 points a game. Like, that's the difference right there. Is like that. that's the stuff that like that wins you a championship is like him stepping up. If he doesn't step up, they're probably eliminated at this point. Um, and it's like that's what you kind of need from a team is those young guys to really like take a leap or just like. And he took a leap in the regular season too, but to sustain that and keep it going in the playoffs, that's the stuff that like again build a championship team where you're like, wow, I remember for example the Spurs. We'll talk about that playoff series, but the Spurs in 2014 with Kawhi, where it's like it's the start of that where you like that dude like stepped up in the final, stepped up in the playoffs, and really like took a really good team and made it into a great team. So
Yeah.
and then again Wiggins too. Like I didn't expect this from Wiggins. I didn't expect him to be as good as he has been this year in his role and kind of towards the second half of the year, averaging 16 and 7 in the playoffs, and again pretty good efficiency, 48% from the field, 35% from three. Like he's doing what he needs to do, and he's playing good defense as well, which we did not expect. I don't think many people at all expected Wiggins to be this type of defender when he came into the league. Not that he couldn't become it, but like he never really gave a ton of effort on defense in college. I remember that was kind of one of his weaknesses. Him and Jabari had in similar way where they were kind of like, are these guys going to really try on defense? Obviously, Wiggins is super athletic. You can see some of the dunks he has and everything. Like we've always known that, but it was kind of like, can we get him to really play good defense on the perimeter and stuff? And he's been taking teams' best players and locking them up. And so props to him for that. And again, just another guy that's stepping up in his role. Do you have anything else to say about Golden State?
Just I guess talking about Poole is like I feel like he's established himself as maybe a top 5 guy under 25 years old with the likes of. Now I'm not saying he's on par with these guys, but you think Tatum, Luka, Trae Young, one other guy up there I'd have in the top 4 or 5. But I mean, you look at like a Tyrese Maxey, I'd probably take him over Maxey.
I was gonna say I have a quick just a question. I think we might have even I might have
But yeah, ask for
okay.
the viewers.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little keep trade cut. I saw this was tweeted a couple months ago, and my answers. I think you have the same answer as me. I think it's pretty obvious, but keep trade cut. Poole Maxey Hero.
Yeah, we did have the same. I said keep Poole, keep trade cut, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, keep Poole, trade Maxey, and cut Hero. And I don't want to, I feel like people are gonna be like, oh, you're just saying this like there's 1 year for Poole, but he's just the level of like how consistently good he's been is what proves it to me. Like there haven't been many young guys I've seen in the league that are kind of like they're okay. Like I wasn't super high on Poole when he got drafted, as a lot of people weren't. Kind of like, like he's okay. We'll see. Man, he can get to the rim. He's so quick. He's becoming a really good playmaker. And obviously he's shown, that he's got good potential to shoot. Now you could look at, Golden State in 2 ways with him. Is Golden State elevating his game because he's like the 3rd or 4th guy? Or is he just good enough where he puts them another, step higher? I don't know what you think, but because some people, I've seen like, oh, if he was a number 1 or number 2 guy, he'd be getting, shadowed a lot more and he wouldn't be playing as good. And it's like, to a point, I agree, but he's thrived so good in his role.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think you can say he's helped by them and he also helps them. Like I don't think they're not where they are without him, but he's also not the player he is without being in a really good system and around some really good players. And like, yeah, as far as the like Hero Maxey thing, like again, like you said, I think Poole's a lot more consistent. I do think the upside is there more than those other two. Like they have upside. I'm not saying they don't. I've never seen Hero as like a future superstar. I'm not the biggest Tyler Hero fan, as most people know. I don't see him as like a superstar, like, or even just a star. Like I think he's like, he's a solid role player. He's a solid like guy to have. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I compared him to around like a Lou Williams, where it's like, any team would like a Lou Williams. But he's never going to be like, a star player. And same with Maxey. Like I don't see Maxey being a star. I see Maxey being a good player. But Poole, I look at and I'm like, Poole could become like a star, like a top 20, 25 player in the league. And, again, be able to consistently be really, really good. So I love what I've seen from Poole. And, yeah, just, again, the upside seems like it's there. And being able to score, get to the rim, do everything out there. And as I said, I think it goes both ways. He helps them, and he's also helped by them as well. So let's shift our focus now to the Eastern Conference Finals. Another it was a bad series until those final two games.
Yeah.
Like it was some ugly basketball at times, dude. That Miami offense was pretty atrocious again
Was
at
not.
times for most of the time. And part of it is Boston. Like people always are like, oh, well, it's Boston's defense. Like it goes both ways. Some of it's unlucky shooting, some of it's just bad offense, and some of it is really good defense. The Celtics we know have a really really good defense. I've never once said that they don't. We obviously disagree sometimes with like the flopping and just like I wish they'd play a little bit more real defense at times, but we all know they're a really really good defense. And the Heat have a good defense too, and that's what kind of made this series ugly at times. Is there'd be games like seemed like it was always either a blowout those first few games, or then when it became close, it was close but ugly. Like I think Game 5, it was like really close throughout, but it was just ugly as hell, or at least for the first three quarters. But then it was super ugly. It was like in the 50s, 60s, late in the third quarter, and so yeah, I never thought Miami would win Game 6, and
No.
because it just looked like again once Hero went out, and I don't think Hero's that great of a player, but he's one of their few like playmakers, shot creators, ball handlers out there. And taking him away, their offense was so bad. Like they just didn't have anything. And so I didn't think there was any way they'd win Game 6. Jimmy went off in Game 6 and was fantastic. And then he was very good in Game 7 as well. And then obviously misses that three at the end. Boston wins a good game. But yeah, it did. I mean, I knew no matter what happened in Game 7, I'm like, the better team here is Boston. Like they're better, overall their offense is better. I don't think I think Miami can maybe pull together another game and Jimmy Butler can have a game, but like Boston's the better team. And so I mean the better team won. And as far as I think Jimmy, like he was so good in this series, but I also think he's being a little bit like I don't want to say overhyped, but I think his series as a whole is being a little bit overhyped because he sucked games 3, 4. Was it 3, 4? Yeah, 3, 4, and 5. He was terrible. I mean, he had 13, 8, and 6 in those 3 games or whatever. I don't know if it was in that order, but he had
combined for about 30 points over 3 games.
Like that's terrible. Like that's that's not like he only had 20. Like he had 13, 8, and 6. And I think people. I mean, it should get brushed over a little bit because he stepped up big time in the 2 biggest games, Game 6 and 7. But I don't know. I just hate this narrative of I know people right away were like, oh well, he's playing like Giannis did again. He's stepped up to the level Giannis did against the Heat. And I'm like, well, Giannis was consistently at 30 points a game. Jimmy did it for Game 1, Game 6, and 7. But I don't know. Overall, I wouldn't what were you thinking with Game 7? Who did you have? Who did you think was going to win? Who were you rooting for? What were your thoughts?
I honestly had no idea just because, I mean, obviously you and I were watching that Game 6. We both thought Boston was closing that out at home. And going into Game 7, I was just like, wow, I know Jimmy could do this again, even though he was terrible the 3 games before Game 6. We know how he can rise to the occasion. My thing kind of was how banged up really is Boston. Grant Williams had not been playing good most, if not all, the series. Robert Williams was on and off the court. Smart was kind of banged up. But, I mean, they pulled it out. I had no idea what to expect for Game 7. And as for who I wanted, man, I guess after kind of having to deal with those Boston fans, maybe Miami, but I'm still not a big Miami guy. And it would have just made it all the worse. Oh my God, I know we could have beat Miami. I know we would have made it to the finals then. So seeing Boston do it's kind of all right, they have a really good team. They beat us without our second best guy.
I think I wanted Miami because I just don't like Boston, but yeah, I don't like Miami either. And again, knowing that I'd rather see a Warriors Boston final. I wasn't super upset when Boston won. It was I kind of wanted Miami, but I didn't really care that much. Whereas finals, I definitely really want Golden State. But
yeah,
I mean, again, overall, this series it was very weird in the sense that again those first I think 4, might even been first 5 games were blowouts from the get-go. Like, it was like teams had like 20-point leads in the first quarter,
Yeah.
which is just bizarre. And a couple of them, they came back and made it close, or maybe one of them, I don't remember. But still, it was just like, I don't know. It seemed like there were a lot of big leads. There was a lot of blowouts. It was just kind of like, it was, and with the Heat too, the Heat truck up a ton of threes. So it's kind of like when they're hot, they're really good. When they're cold, they're really bad. And there's kind of no in between. And it was just like, I don't know. And that's how the Bucks have been sometimes too in the past. But
And that's what I was going to say. It kind of felt a little reminiscent of a few of the games, later in the series for us against Boston, where we just couldn't buy a shot. Obviously, Game 7 being one of them. And as you said before, just to kind of touch on like Boston's defense, obviously great. I know they switch a lot. I want to say I saw they switch on like 40% of like screens on ball or something like that. But they do it because they're able to, pretty much switch 1 through 5. And it's just, what was I going to say? It's just pretty crazy how Boston just been able to shut certain guys down at times. And like Bam had that one, was it game 3, I think, when he went off for like 30. Maybe it was later.
I think it was. I don't even know.
Before.
I lose track of all the games, but I know there was one. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was inconsistent.
Yeah, no, he like sucked the first 2 games. I think he had less than 10 points in the first couple. Then he had that game, and then it was like Boston just knew how to kind of guard him again, and he would just kind of felt absent. Lowry was terrible. So there were just times where it's like it wasn't that fun. But as you said, part of it's the defense throws shooters off. I get, but also how much does the defense throw shooters off when they're wide open? I don't know. They're NBA shooters. They should be able to knock shots down, and they weren't.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, before we move on, what are your thoughts on, and real quick, I do want to say, I think I talked about Golden State's role player stepping up. I think Boston's been the same way of like, and every single championship team has this. The Bucks had it last year. Pat and Bobby, like, just were so much like better than you could have even imagined, and they were just awesome.
Yeah.
And you have to have that. Like, it can't just be your stars playing well. Like, Tatum's been good, Brown's been good, but like Smart's been good. Al Horford has stepped up, obviously, in games. Grant Williams, Derek White, like, that's got to give them some props because they've been really good in their roles and like doing what they need to do. Having some big games at times. Obviously, like Grant, Derek White, Horford, they're not going to be smart. They're not going to be playing, like, they're not going to be scoring 20 every game, but like it seems like they'll have 20-point games when they kind of need it, or like it just seems like they step up whenever they need it. I was going to ask, do you think Tatum is getting at all too much praise? Like, I feel like Jaylen Brown isn't getting talked about enough in the same realm as Tatum. And like, I get Tatum gets more attention and like it opens things up for Brown a little bit, but like, I don't know. It feels like this thing of like people are treating it like it's been like Tatum absolutely going off and Tatum's been carrying them. And like, I mean, to me, I'm just like, I think it's been a lot more of a team effort than we've seen in years past. Like we saw last year, it was a lot of like Giannis. I mean, guys stepped up. Chris stepped up when Giannis went out. Drew stepped up at times last year, but it was a lot of like, Giannis carrying. Whereas like this just seems like, I don't know. It doesn't. To me, I've never gotten that sense of like, wow, Tatum is carrying them. There's been games he's gone off and like, willed them to victory. Game 6 against the Bucks was an example of that. He had 46.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I feel like Jaylen Brown kind of gets looked over a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think he does too, and I think part of it is like I don't know what exactly his stats are, but it feels like he's a lot more of an inconsistent 3-point shooter than Tatum. And obviously Tatum's defense helps a lot. He's probably the best ball handler on the team, which is kind of funny from a guy that's like 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". I'm not sure exactly what he is, but I know they talked about Brown struggles dribbling, which we've seen.
Yeah, he does. He needs to work on that.
But I mean, his game, like especially in the series against Milwaukee, was like he was really good around the rim from what I remember in a lot of games, or like hit some big mid-range shots. And I feel like he's a little more like spread out, making shots throughout the game. Whereas Tatum, I feel like there's been a lot of times where he'll kind of, he starts really hot, like especially that game 6. He had a ton of points early. I mean, he had 24, with a little time left in the third. I think he finished with 26. And Miami was forcing the ball out of his hands. They were double teaming him. They were pressuring him. way above the 3-point line. But Brown definitely deserves more recognition. Derek White stepped up a lot. Smart, has been pretty solid when he's been healthy, I guess you could say. So definitely been a team effort, like you said.
Yeah. And yeah, it is kind of fitting that I think the two teams that have that had the biggest team efforts in these playoffs are going to the finals. So it should be a good series. We'll obviously we're going to have podcasts out after some of the games and stuff and during the series. So looking forward to it. But let's get into our Tuesday top 10. We're going to go through and rank the last 10 NBA finals. This is going to be a combination of the closest of the games, the length of the series, the memorable moments, all that. So kind of just our opinion on what have been the 10. I think I've watched, every one of these pretty extensively. Like even when I was younger, 2012, 2013, like you obviously don't understand the game as much, but like I know what happened. I know, what was the flow of the series and everything. So, we were both big NBA fans growing up, so I feel like you were the same way.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into it. I'm going to give you the floor for your worst, number 10, but your worst NBA Finals series in the past decade.
Okay, my worst NBA Finals, 2014, between the Spurs and the Heat. I kind of have a couple bullet points why each. Obviously, I was 13 years old-ish around there, so it's like you said, I was always watching. I remember like bits and pieces of some of these, or certain moments as we'll talk about, but this was the biggest point differential in NBA Finals history, still is. I think it was like plus 70 for the Spurs. Won all 4 of their games by 15 points, and their only loss was a 2-point loss to the Heat.
I don't agree with this. We'll get it. Well, I'm just gonna go with my number 10. My number 10, and then I'll eventually we'll both once I get to where 2014 stands for me, we'll kind of talk about it. But my worst is 2017, which was Warriors over the Spurs or over the Cavs, in 5 games. And this, to me, the average margin of victory was 15 points in the series. The Warriors ended up going up 3-0, so it kind of you'd lost interest. Really, the only memorable moment was Durant shot in Game 3 over LeBron to kind of like ice it and basically end the series. KD, won his first ring and everything. Like it had that storyline to it, but really, like there was nothing super memorable about this. Everyone kind of knew the Warriors were going to win, and they go up 3-0, so there's really not much interest, I guess. So, yeah, and again, just there weren't many good games. Like it was just a lot of like, okay, well the Warriors outplayed them and won. So I'm going with that.
Okay, you want to give your 9th or me?
I'll go my 9th. We'll switch off here. My 9th was then 2018. So the next year where the Warriors swept them, Warriors over Cavs. So I had, I know this one was a sweep and the other one went 5 games, but this one you had I almost put this at 8 because you had the fantastic Game 1, which gave you it was overtime. LeBron had a 50-point game. The J.R. Smith, meltdown at the end of the game where he didn't know what the score was and everything.
Yeah.
And LeBron not knowing what he was doing and all this stuff. So that was a super exciting, super fun game. And like that alone, I think at least puts it over 2017 because you didn't have that at all in 2017. But after that, this was a boring series, kind of the same thing. They obviously went on a sweep. Average margin of victory was 15 points. So, it wasn't an exciting series after that, but they at least had a very good first game.
Yeah, that's very fair. I have 2017 at 9, so 1 spot above. There's only 1 game decided by like 5 or 6 points, I think. To me, this I don't know. I was just debating because this was the highest scoring, points per game, both teams, whatever you want to say, it was like 236 points or something. So of like any of these finals, if you like scoring, this was the finals, but so many lopsided games. There's like 2 or 3 20-point games. So how much fun can you have when it's that big of a blowout?
Yeah. So I'm going to hope your number 8 is 2018.
It is 2018 with the sweep. I think there's only been like 9 sweeps or something like that. And yeah, kind of all the same reasons you said. That one game that went to OT ended up being a 10-point win by Golden State, which was the second closest game other than an 8-point win. Everything else was high double digits. So
I'm gonna go, and I mean, at least like these were interesting because you had a lot of star power in them. Obviously, you had LeBron. It
yeah,
was like, and it was, the whole rivalry between the Warriors and Cavs. Like, it's not like they were super terrible, but it just you kind of knew who was gonna win, and it was like, okay, you're just waiting for the inevitable to happen. My number 8 is the bubble 2020 Lakers over Heat. Not a terrible series. It being in the bubble definitely bumps it down for me. It just not having the crowds, like it there wasn't as much excitement. It didn't feel like the finals as much. Average margin of victory 10 points, so it wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't like super close. The Lakers went up 3-1, and so that kind of took some excitement out of it, where you kind of knew going into the game 5 and 6 who was going to win the series. And even that game 6 was like a blowout. I think at halftime it was like a 20-something point game. So it wasn't like an exciting game 6 or anything. So to me, this wasn't that fun of a finals, and especially with it being in the bubble, it was just kind of meh.
yeah.
And then I'll go then and again for number 7. So then my 7 is 2014, which you had at number 10, Spurs over Heat. Now, I didn't think this was that bad. I thought, I mean, I know that the Spurs definitely killed them in those last 3 games, but game 2 was good. It was a 2-point game. Series was and the Heat won, so the series was tied 1-1. So you had some interest there, where it wasn't like the Spurs jumped out to a 2-0 lead. I know that again, the other games were blowouts. Average margin of victory of 15 points, but I thought it wasn't that bad, and at least again, it was more exciting to me than like the bubble where they're I don't know, like the Warriors went up, or the Lakers went up 3-1 in the bubble. The Spurs went up 3-1 in this series, but this one to me was just a little bit more exciting, and we at least had that close game too. We had Kawhi stepping up, which was like a cool thing. He won Finals MVP in this series, and I think watching the Spurs was kind of exciting. They just had a lot of good ball movement, good shooting, a lot of stars in this series as well. So I'm going with them. I moved them up to 7. You had it at 10.
At 7 for me, I have the bubble final spot above you. It just didn't feel right, and that's maybe people are like, oh, you just don't like LeBron or something like that. Like, it just didn't. It felt weird. It didn't feel like the Heat really deserved to be there.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't think that's either because we lost them. It was just such a weird feeling. There's no home court for either, so there wasn't like the entertainment of the crowd getting into it. I almost debated having this a little lower, but I guess since it went to 6 and it was still like a interesting like thing where people could be like, oh, this was maybe the weirdest finals of all time. I guess maybe you can give it a little leeway, but
yeah, and just thinking about it too, like it is such a in a playoff series, you're kind of constantly thinking about like, okay, next one's at home, next one's on the road, and the dynamic of like stealing home court and all that. And there just wasn't that in the bubble because every game was basically neutral. So it's like it didn't really matter who had home court. It didn't matter like, again, if you won one of those first 2 and you stole home court, like it didn't really mean anything. So it's just that whole element was kind of taken away from it. But
yeah.
All right, I'll let you go number 6.
All right, number 6, I have the 2012 finals. I was playing with this one a little bit. Heat over OKC. There's actually a lot of good games in this series. 3 of the 5 were decided by 6 or less. Some pretty high scoring games. Westbrook put up 20 something a game. Durant was going off. LeBron had a great series. Was this LeBron's first year or no? Maybe not.
Yeah, this was his first championship.
Okay. First championship, I should say. There's a lot of good games, but also just having it only go 5 games kind of put it a little lower for me.
Yeah, I also have that at number 6. I think this is about as good of a 5-game series as you can ask for.
Yeah, for sure.
Given that it was 1-1 after 2. I mean, it was 1-0. Like the Thunder went up 1-0, and so there was at least again, it wasn't like from the get-go you knew who was going to win this, and a lot of the games were close. Average margin of victory was 8 points. Lots of stars. I mean, some of them weren't huge stars yet, but you had LeBron, KD, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Westbrook, Harden. Um, and yeah, just that whole like, okay, it's this young team up and coming against, LeBron trying to win his first title, and LeBron won his first title. So that was kind of a big storyline, all that stuff. So a lot that went into it. So I thought it was, pretty good, especially, again, given it only went 5 games. It's about as good as you can ask for. My number 5 then is 2019 with the Raptors beating the Golden State Warriors. This one, Kawhi had a legendary playoffs and finals. First title for Toronto, first title for Lowry. I think it ended up, so they won in 6. So at least it went 6 games. Average margin of victory was 8 points. So there were, plenty of pretty good games in this series. I know game 5 and 6 were both very good. They both came down to, kind of the last shot. And it didn't, I mean, the Warriors being kind of hurt didn't help. KD missed most of the series. Clay got hurt in game 6, which does take a little bit away from it, where like it's not the Raptors being a fully healthy Warriors. You kind of like have that what if factor. Mm-hmm. And the Raptors did go up 3-1. So that kind of, again, it kind of took a little bit of interest away knowing that they were probably going to win. But again, game 5 was really, really good. I remember Steph and Clay had some clutch threes. Kawhi was clutch. Like there were a lot of clutch plays in that game. Warriors ended up pulling it out, and then they went back to Oakland, and that game went down to like the final shot. So, good series though. Good series.
My number 5, I went with 2015 finals, which was Golden State over Cleveland. 2 OT games in this series. But there was, I think, 3 of the 4 games were decided by like 8 or more points. I mean, went to 6 games, fun series, but I have kind of my reasons for the top 4, so I went with this at 5. I don't know what you think of that, but
I'll say I have it at 4. And I thought, to me, I really like this series. I think again, you had the 2 overtime games, the first 2 games, and so there's overtime games 1 and 2. They split them. Game 3 was close. The Cavs went up 2-1, and the Warriors went on to win the next 3. I just like, again, you had the beginning of the rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Steph wins his first title. Warriors their first title in a long time, kind of the start of the dynasty. LeBron was really good, and then you had like some role players stepping up. Iguodala ended up winning Finals MVP, which I don't think he should have, but he still was very good in that series. Matthew Dellavedova kind of emerged as like, just a good role player and everything. And average margin of victory was 10 points. So like, and again, there were 3 really close games to start this.
Yeah.
And then the Warriors kind of took over a little bit, and Steph took over. But I like the series, so I had it at 4. But so I'm gonna guess your number 4 is 2019.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Also, real quick about the 2015. I honestly didn't realize till I was looking back that it was 4 years in a row we had Warriors Cavs. I guess like obviously in the back of my head I kind of knew that, but
yeah,
it's kind of weird like thinking back like wow we really had a rematch 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
But anyway, 2019. I like this final just because it was like wow somebody finally took down, other than 2016, but somebody finally took down the Warriors. So this was Raptors 1 and 6, I believe.
Yeah.
I had 3 of the games were 5 points or less, and what was the other thing? 5 of the 6 games were road wins, which I thought made it really interesting. For
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, to go in and steal wins. So that's why I had a little bit above 2015 too, and pretty high scoring back and forth. Just felt like it was a really clean and good series. Like seeing Kawhi in there. Raptors had a lot of like even scoring. Siakam played pretty solid. Lowry. So that was a fun series for me to watch.
Yeah. All right. Top 3. I'll let you go for your number 3.
Number 3. I'm curious where you're gonna have this. I have the 2016 NBA Finals. Almost had it a spot lower. I just think it gets a little overhyped because of that Game 7, which I get. Everyone lives for a Game 7, me included. That LeBron block, crazy. It was kind of an uneventful other like last 3-4 minutes. So I think there's only like a few baskets scored. It was low. I think the lowest scoring game of the series. Um, this was one of the first series I like really kind of fully remember. But I will say, I don't know if you felt this at all, or if you remember. I truly felt like game 3 or 4. I was like, it just felt wrong. It felt like they really wanted it to go 7, and it felt like they wanted Cleveland to win. And maybe that's kind of where my hatred for LeBron started growing. So maybe that's why I was feeling that when I was younger. But I just had this weird feeling like, man, it just feels kind of like rigged ish. Not rigged necessarily for LeBron to win. I mean, played a great game 7, but just felt weird.
It did seem okay. I'm not gonna say it was rigged. I did. It did seem like it was like almost too good of a storyline to be true and
Yeah.
stuff. Like
Not rigged in the way of like, oh, the Cavs only won because it was rigged.
it just,
Rigged
yeah, like
like it felt forced. Like we're getting this to game 7. It felt almost like fake ish in
yeah.
ways.
So I'll say I had it 3 as well, and I have argued too that I think it's overrated, and because I feel like you tell anyone what do you think is the best finals, even if you said of all time, people right away are like 2016, 2016. Not at all. Like to me, not no. Um, the first 6 games were absolute blowouts. Let's not forget that. Literally, the average margin of victory in the first 6 games was 20 points,
Yeah.
which is insane. But yeah, I get like the whole storyline was like this almost seems too good to be true. It almost seemed like the Warriors just came back from a 3-1 lead, and they're the 73-9 best team ever, Golden State Warriors, come back from a 3-1 lead, and then they're gonna blow one. LeBron's gonna get his first title in Cleveland, beating a 73-9 team in a game 7. Like it seemed like, yeah, not that it was rigged, but it did seem a little bit like, come on, like is this
Yeah.
actually happening? Draymond getting suspended for game 5 was a little bit fishy, and like, was that part of them trying to want it to take it further and everything?
Yep.
Because I'll be honest, I think if Draymond plays game 5, they win. I mean, he was very important to that team, and he always
Yeah.
has been. Not
Absolutely.
that game 5 wasn't super close, but like I just feel like it changes things. It's and that's kind of that game 5 is really you're like when you're up 3-1 back at home for a game 5 is like you're closing them out there. Like, you're at home up 3-1, like you're good. But if you all of a sudden lose that, and then they have a road game that they can easily lose, all of a sudden it's in 7, you don't know what's going to happen. Like it changes things. And again, I do, like you said, I completely understand people loving this series because of game 7, like the
Hmm.
moments it brought, and then because of LeBron winning the title, bringing it for Cleveland, the 3-1 lead, all that. The block was amazing, the shot, Kyrie's shot was amazing, all that stuff. But I do think, you have to look at the series as a whole a little bit, and at least, the fact that after those first 6 games, how 20-point margin of victory, the fact that we have this high is like shows you that game 7 was legendary,
Yeah.
the way it ended was legendary. But like you got to look at the whole thing a little bit. I think, as you mentioned too, that game 7 was very close, but yeah, it was definitely ugly in the sense that nobody could hit a shot near the end. I think the
Yeah.
Warriors didn't score in like the last 3.5, 4 minutes. Because I've watched the fourth quarter plenty of times. Like I'll just randomly, like, it'll pop up on my YouTube recommended, like final minute or final 7 minutes
Yeah.
or whatever, and I just watch it. I watched it, I honestly, like 4 days ago. And yeah, it was ugly. Like it was 89. What was it? 80, 89, 89 for like 2-3 minutes coming down the stretch. And then Kyrie finally hit the shot, and then LeBron ends up getting fouled with like 10 seconds off, hits a free throw to make it 4. But like, yeah, nobody. It's the one thing I didn't like about that game 7, and I mean, it was kind of like beautifully ugly, but like at the same
Yeah.
time, like there was only that one clutch shot. There weren't like it wasn't going back and forth. It was just like miss, miss, miss. Then you had the block, which was exciting. Miss, miss, miss. You had the Kyrie shot, miss, miss. It was like there were just it was a lot of ugly basketball. But I definitely think this is an overrated finals. Not that it was bad by any means, but just as a whole, it definitely was not the best. And then my number 2 is Bucks over Suns, which obviously for us it's number 1 in the sense that like our favorite one.
Yeah.
But trying to be unbiased here, and people are going to think, oh, you put 2021 over 2016, you're super biased, blah blah blah. I genuinely don't think so. Like I think this
Mhm.
was a fantastic finals. It went, it was for the most part close games. I feel like there weren't many games where it was like completely decided by the fourth quarter or anything. Like I know the Bucks won one of the games by 20. I think Suns won the first two by double digits, but the Bucks were kind of in them. But close games, the game 5 was absolutely legendary. Giannis, some really nice performances in this series too. Giannis had 3 40-point games. Chris had a 40-point game. Giannis, obviously, the 50-point game. Then you had the Giannis legendary moments of the block, the steal, and the oop from Drew, and again, the 50-point game in Game 6, which is legendary. Giannis being hurt adds to the storyline and everything, and playing through the injury. Giannis's first title, Bucks' first title in 50 years. Only an average margin of victory of 6 points in games 4 through 6. Like, again, those first 3 were like, I can understand being like, okay, this isn't fantastic finals yet, but then like game 4 was amazing. You had the block, super close, all that, super intense. Bucks had to have it, and they did. Game 5 obviously was incredible. Bucks came back from down like 17 or 18 in that game. Crazy final few minutes, crazy oop at the end. And then, of course, Game 6, where it was close throughout, and Giannis had a legendary performance. And just, again, the Bucks went back from down 2-0. It's like it wasn't, this wasn't a thing where, okay, a team went up 2-0 or maybe 2-0 or 3-1 and kind of just held on. Like, it was up 2-0, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, Bucks tied it. Okay, you have a, Game 5, which kind of unpredictable, and the Bucks came through, and like I just think it was a really, really good series.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm right with you, especially like you said, we're Bucks fans. People might think, oh, you guys are just saying that. Last 3 games, all decided by 7 or less. I think it was, I want to say 6 points, and then 4-point win for us, and 7-point win, obviously, in game 6.
Yeah.
And as you said, quick on 2016, like 6 of those games were double digits, a 30-point win, a 23-point win. It's like this series was a lot closer. I have it as well, number 2, by the way. And just a lot more memorable moments. Like you think 2016, okay, you're thinking Game 7, which is fair. But it's like Suns come out up 2-0 for the Bucks to come back. And just the storyline of Giannis in general. Then, like you said, the block, the lob, having 2 teams that hadn't been there in a while. I guess the Suns, kind of had their runs in the past, but first finals in 50 years for the Bucks. Like I like seeing different teams in there, not even just if it's us. I liked when the Raptors made it. So that's kind of what put over the top for me.
Yeah, and this is the same with like why to me it kind of has to be in that top 3 because when you look at all the ones underneath it, you look at 2015, 2019, 2012, 2014, any of those, like literally any of their finals, but besides basically 2016 where you had the block and the LeBron block and you had the Kyrie shot, I honestly cannot think, and obviously we have number 1 2013, which had some memorable moments in there, but I'm talking about the ones below it. To me, it has to be top 3 because the only 3 series that had memorable plays that we're going to be talking about as long as we're alive were 2016 with the block and the shot, 2021 with the Giannis block, the Giannis alley-oop the next game, and then the Giannis 50-point game, which are 3, like that's 3 games in a row where you had like a legendary thing happen, which is crazy to me. Again, 2016 was really only 1 game. And then obviously in 2013, which we both have as our number 1, the Ray Allen game 6 shot, and then that going to a legendary game 7. Like, to me, there's really no other series that has really even one like moment like that you're going to talk about forever. I mean, LeBron's first title's cool, but like it didn't have a moment. Spurs over Heat didn't have a moment. Raptors didn't have like one singular moment. Like there wasn't anything like that to me.
No.
I'm trying to think of even like how many of these had even like, I don't think there haven't really been any buzzer beaters or like anything like that. Whereas again, I think that besides like the Ray Allen thing, like you had the Ray Allen, which was with 6 seconds left or whatever, and then Kyrie shot, which was clutch. The Giannis oop and block are like 2 of the clutchest plays ever, and so it's like I just think you have to at least have a top 3 in my opinion. But I can understand wanting to put 2016 just because you went to a game 7 and that can tip it over the scale, but it seems like it's a lock for the top 3 just based on plays we're going to talk about for as long as we're alive. But we both have 2013 Heat over the Spurs, number 1. I am pleasantly surprised you had this as well, because I didn't know if you were going to be like, oh, 2016. But yeah, I think this is the best overall. Again, when you combine everything, it was pretty close for several games. It was back and forth. You got a amazing game 6, amazing game 7. It went 7 games. Like it kind of had everything.
Yeah, they had, I think, 3 games were decided by like 6, 7, 8 points. So, you figure a few possessions close. And like you said, these top 3 were 3 series that have an iconic moment. I truthfully can't think of one. Now, I'm sure if you go back, maybe there's some, but like for the other series, I can't really think of any that would top, the LeBron block plays by Giannis. And then Ray Allen, I mean, that's probably my first moment engraved in my head. Like, holy crap, that's like such a clutch shot to hit that corner.
Yeah, I think that's the best shot of all time.
Yeah, no, I mean the offensive rebound kicks it out. Like that was a fun series, and that I didn't realize. I guess that was back when it was a 2-3-2. So obviously Game 6 in Miami, that was the force. Game 7, keep it at home. Like it was just the excitement around that. Miami fans were so into it back then. Not so much anymore. Half the crowd's empty for the whole first quarter. But now, or back then, they had the whole whiteout. They were really into it, so I gave them credit. That was just complete series. Game 7, can't ask for much more.
Yeah, and the average margin of victory was actually it was 14 points, which is a lot, but it's kind of inflated by 2 games. I think the games the game 1 was really, really good. Tony Parker had a clutch shot at the end to basically ice it on the road and kind of right away steal home court.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then game 6 and 7, of course, but those were like the 3, I think, in my opinion, probably the 3 most important games in terms of like if you're gonna have a really good game, you'd want it to be in game 1, and then you'd want it to be in the final couple games. So those 3 were fantastic. You had LeBron hitting game 7 was really good. You had LeBron hitting a clutch shot down the stretch, and I mean just a lot of star power in the series. And obviously game 6, the comeback and everything at the end was just it was insane, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall this one just kind of has it all. If Bucks Suns had gone to 7, you could argue maybe Bucks Suns would be, I mean, depending on what happened in game 7 and everything, but
yeah,
you would argue that that's the only way Bucks Suns could maybe go over it. But I definitely think that 2013 is number 1. I like our top 3: 2013, then 2021, then 2016.
Yeah, we were really similar, other than obviously me having 2014 dead last. You had it 7, but yeah, pretty. I feel like almost undebatable top 3, just kind of based on what we talked. But
yeah, just it's tough to again think about the best NBA Finals moments, and I feel like they're all coming from that series for the most part. So, or I guess the most memorable, iconic ones, I think, are all coming from that series in the last 10 years. So,
yeah.
Okay, now my last question before we end this thing: where would you predict Celtics Warriors ends on this list if we had to add it to it?
I'd probably say right around that 5 or 6 mark. Maybe maybe it cracks the top 5, but to me, it's like. I don't know if it'll necessarily be better than Raptors over Warriors, because I mean, I'm with you. I think the Warriors probably win this in 6. Maybe they can do 5. I'm curious to see, how Boston's defense comes out against such a Golden State offense that is clicking on all levels right now. Obviously there's always room for improvement, but and how are these young guys on Boston who haven't been on this stage before? How are they going to play? I definitely think Golden State takes game 1, but Boston's been really good on the road in the playoffs. So that'll be interesting to see if they can steal one of those first 2.
Yeah, I'd also, or did you want to say something else?
No, just ask the same. How do you feel?
Go ahead. I also would say it'll be in that middle territory. I mean, it's tough to predict one to be in the top 3 or the bottom 3, like unless you really knew it was going to be clear as day, one team's going to win. You could predict the bottom 3, but it's almost impossible to predict when they're in the top 3 because it just crazy stuff just happens. But
yeah,
I do think it could be up, near there, and I think it'll probably end up around the 5 range. Like I kind of talked about, 2012 was about as good as you can get out of a 5-game series, and I do think Warriors can realistically win this thing in 5. But like I said, I think it'll be about as good of one as you can ask for. I think it'll be close games. I'm hoping we can get some, legendary performances from like Curry, Tatum, and stuff to really kind of push it up there. If it goes 6, you can even then maybe start to bump it into the top, 3, 4, just like Bucks Suns. But I mean, I don't think we're gonna get the type of iconic moments we got out of Bucks Suns. Like it's hard to get that. It's hard to top that.
And
I
like
think
you said, it's kind of hard to predict.
Yeah.
It might be a 1-point game. Tatum comes down, hits a huge three with 11 seconds or something, and now all of a sudden, this is looking like, holy crap, that's an iconic moment. And obviously that can happen any game. So it's tough to judge, but
Yeah, but I would say my prediction is Warriors win it in 5-6. Close series. We, say, hey, it was a good series and everything. Curry gets his first Finals MVP, which will make it, a little bit more memorable. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just talked about. I think Warriors have a little bit too much firepower for them compared to the Bucks, who didn't have Chris, and the Heat, who when they didn't, even with Hero, they didn't have a ton of firepower, and without him, just not much there. And the Celtics have, great defense. They just haven't had to face a team that has, so the Warriors have 4 guys averaging over 15 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think the Heat had 1, which was Jimmy, and we had 2, Giannis and Drew. But like to have 4 guys that can do that is just a different animal. Their ball movement, all that, and they bring it on both sides. Like I think they can almost match Boston defensively. They were tied for the best defensive rating in the regular season with them, or second to them in defensive rating in the regular season, and they had the best offensive rating in the playoffs. So I think they just bring it on both sides, and they're the first team that can kind of do that against the Celtics. They've played Bucks and Miami. The Bucks and Miami, have fantastic defenses, but their playoff offenses with the injuries and everything haven't been great. But I think Warriors have it on both sides. So I'm picking Warriors for sure in 5-6. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Any last words for you?
Not really. I mean, I'm hoping for a good series, obviously. No, bad blood towards Boston. I do think Golden State wins, as we said. Also, I don't know if you're gonna post this at all, but I'll make sure to post our top 10. So if you're listening, go check it out on Twitter. And let us know what you think. But yeah.
Sweet. All right. But you said no bad blood towards Boston. I do have bad blood towards Boston. But I'm putting that aside. I'm making like my unbiased take is I do think Golden State wins this series. But we'll see what happens. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Enjoy some NBA Finals, and we will talk to you when we talk to you. See you guys later.